That's okay. Oh, we're live. Hey, everybody. How you doing? It's Chuck Cook, John Wasden, and Greg Ziska. Great. John, you're looking really fit and ready today.
I had to start myself from my military reserve PT test. So, now that I've done that and I've passed, I'm good for another year. I
know the beard is grown back. How was the reunion, by the way?
30-year high school reunion. It was very entertaining. It was I wondered who the old people were when I showed up.
I'm coming up on my 45th, so they don't get any younger, my friend.
No, I'm afraid not. It's like everybody just kind of groans when they bend over to pick something up. It's like a retirement community more than anything.
Well, that's awesome.
Them are on their second and third and fourth marriages by now.
Yeah.
There's always something like that. Hey, I want to start with our wastage lawsuit. Did you come up with a better name, Greg, than the EB mandamus and wastage litigation last week, or you didn't? Did you?
Yeah. Full disclosure, I'm down with wastage. I really like it.
I like
the whole evidence wastage, in law school. I really like that.
Well, I shared an email with my colleagues here yesterday. We had a client that we filed an EB3 I-144 on March 5th that got approved last week.
Yeah. So first in, first out is for we've known it's nonsense all along, but we're working on that issue. We have had a steady uptick in number of plaintiffs. I'm not worried that we're going to hit our numbers on that. A reminder for our Chakrabarty, we did send out an email to all of the clients from last year to see who wants to join this year. There was no charge if you were in the suit from last year to be in this year. So that should be a relatively easy decision if you're eligible. But just a reminder that we need you to go through the process of signing up for the litigation. You don't have to pay, but we do need an engagement letter and a declaration from you guys if you were in last year. Chuck, I have had some folks that have asked about the situation for people who have adjustment applications that were filed and now dates have retrogressed, and what their situation is. And I'm telling them that's, that it's possible. I mean, it's easier for the Chakrabarty ones because it's like there's not a financial risk for them in joining the suit. But I think, it depends on a lot of things. It's going to depend on the timing of how this case resolves, and maybe the dates will be current again by that point. It might depend on if we are successful getting visas reserved and whether dates are current when they come up in whatever system is worked out if they're reserved. So I'm telling people, just buyer beware. If you join this litigation, that we're not making promises if you're in that situation, and you may end up with us winning the case and not getting the visa.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I probably wouldn't join if that was that situation, unless you think in the next 3 months the PDs are going to move. Well, we'll know a little bit more in about 5 days or 3 days, maybe on Friday when the new visa bulletin comes out. I have been tracking separately for this the USCIS website for processing times for EB2s and EB3s in Texas. They are still inconsistent, by the way. They're not the same. So, just literally the printouts from their own website say they don't take first in, first out. But underneath, and they've changed the wording. I don't know if you guys look at this stuff, but they changed the wording under the processing time page. It says this processing time is based on how long it took us to complete 80% of the adjudicated cases over the past 6 months. Each case is unique, and some take longer than others. Well, okay. All right. How come a whole class of Indians are taking 4 years to adjudicate an I-140? I don't understand. And Texas is at 13.5 months for EB2s. Nebraska is at 12 months for EB2s. And for EB3s, Nebraska is at 16 and a half months, and Texas is also at 16 and a half months, which is kind of crazy because they were at 24 months a couple months ago. And we didn't get flooded with approval notices on I-140s.
So fun fact about the processing times on the website. So back with the H4L2 litigation, we had a string of successive declarations that were embarrassingly inconsistent by the government in terms of how this was done. And the last filing that we had on that issue, I think was the impetus for changing the way they report processing times, and they're backpedaling, and now they claim FIFO is aspirational. Well, if it's aspirational, it's not a rule that you're following. It's not a rule of reason. It's, I have a lot of things that I aspire to, but like having hair, it doesn't mean I'm going to have hair. So that becomes a real problem for the government when they're trying to defend their rule of reason in these cases. If they point to FIFO, we've got data, and we'll get more data through probably the FOIA and discovery processes, showing that is, not the case. And to put it graciously, they're incorrect and don't understand their own numbers.
I really like the before they went to the new format, they had the minimum maximum, which it looked like, because I used the word to, from this date to that date. And it wasn't until last summer when Secretary Mayorkas spoke at the AILA conference online and disclosed what those numbers actually meant. I said, no, that's not I know we use the word to, but that the first number that's about half the cases take that long, and the other number is like 80% of the cases, and some take a lot longer. It's just amazing to me that they just can't give you a time. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, from their perspective, if they gave you a time, then you actually have expectations that they're going to finish things within that period of time, and that if they don't finish it within that period of time, you're going to complain and start, and that is what they're trying to avoid, is making it difficult for people to actually know what to expect, because then they will be less likely to complain.
Put another way, they don't want to be accountable. Is that?
Yeah. Well, the thing is,
that's it.
They don't release the data from which they derive these numbers.
And that's why the discovery process and the FOIA process is so vital, because that's the only way you're really going to get that real hard data. We've got anecdotal stories. Chuck, you were emailing about that earlier today. Yeah. Those anecdotal stories are gold, and I think that's what pushes us over the edge in terms of getting discovery, is that we can counter any type of declaration. And then if we have FOIAs that are filed that we can use as part of the litigation to force those numbers to get turned over, I think that's a huge asset.
Because we know they have the data. That's the thing about CIS. They have data coming out of their ears. They have all kinds of data. I don't think, I'm looking at it from a management perspective, I don't think they know how to use the data.
They could probably hire some of our clients that are very good with this.
I know our H-1B clients from our litigation would be happy to go in and help them resolve their claims. So we're moving forward. We've begun drafting the complaint already, the class action part of this complaint, and we have these great declarations. So if you're interested in joining, this is the time. I'm feeling more and more.
Yeah. So the deadline we have is June 15th is what we have listed for onboarding. I will be candid in telling you that a sizable portion of the lawyers that are working on this case are going to all be in New York next week for a big conference, and that will probably take some of the manpower availability out for a couple of days while that's happening. I'll mention something else about that in a minute. But so the plan is usually to file shortly after our deadline. What we I may talk with colleagues about extending that deadline a couple of days, just because of it's falling right in. I didn't realize when I was when we set that deadline that it was right in the middle of our annual conference. So it may extend a couple of days, and then the goal is usually to file shortly after that. In some respects, it's a little bit faster because there's similarities to the case we did last year. In some respects, it's a little more complicated because it's class. There's some new arguments. We're going to be filing it in more than one place. So I'm not going to tell an exact day yet, but it's usually our goal is to do this. And we usually tell people within a week because we need people to get all their stuff to us. We give them that date. Reality is, after 2 years of this and 24 cases, it's usually a couple weeks after our deadline, before we finally get everything together and get it filed. But you should plan on June 15th right now, and this case being filed in the later part of the month.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Now, Greg, you mentioned we were going to be at the annual conference, the first annual in-person conference in 3 years.
Yes.
Of the American Immigration Lawyers Association.
Very exciting. Yes, and we are getting an award that John is very familiar with because he's gotten it in the past. We are getting the AILA's litigation award, which is for the IMMPact Group is getting it. And it is a recognition of some of the work that we've been doing on various cases with on our own and co-counseling with AILA over the last 2 years. So we're very excited about that. There are going to be a bunch of us from IMMPact that are going to be there. Chuck, I regret to tell you that it said in the email to us that we will not be able to make remarks, acceptance remarks, which I know is killing you.
But they said you could send a speech in and they would publish it. It's like, that's not the same thing.
Yeah. So, but
Greg, I think you're being a little too humble on that, because as a relative outsider from the immigration law perspective, like, no experience with AILA up until a few years ago. I didn't realize how big a deal this award was until our mutual friend Bernie Wolfsdorf said it was like winning the Super Bowl of immigration law. So for you guys to win that, it's a huge deal. It's a huge recognition of the peers and the impact that the IMMPact.
Well, we are very excited about it, and a couple of our friends are also winning awards, including Matt Galati, who is winning the Young Lawyer Award, and some of you may know Matt is helping is co-counseling on the EB5 case with us. Ian Wagereich, who is I'm biking with for 4 days next week, is winning the Mentor Award. Sandra Grossman, who does great work on a lot of very obscure Interpol issues and things like that, is winning an award. So Masa Kambabi,
that's a big deal.
And the Afghan pro bono group from AILA is being recognized, and I've been doing stuff with them, and they do tremendous work. They're being recognized. So there's some really nice things that are going to happen at that ceremony.
And we're all speaking. Now, John, you're not going to be there, are you? Going to be on your trip, or are you going to be there?
No, my trip is after that.
Oh,
so we will see you. Good.
I'll be up there
speaking at the conference, because it's a gigantic. It's not like, hey, let's get there and drink, because immigration lawyers are terrible drinkers.
It's like 4,000.
Yeah, there's like 300 hours of programs during this thing. So speaking on this,
speaking on a technology panel, surprise, surprise, which I love. Don't get me wrong; those are the panels I love. But that's I'm a little typecast over there.
I'm speaking on this year on FOIAs.
Oh, and I have another announcement. And the new edition of my book is coming out. I haven't seen it yet. I will see it next week when I go to New York for the cookbook. Edition 2 is coming out. So there's a lot of stuff happening next week.
That's awesome. John, you must be speaking.
Yeah, I'm speaking on. I have the unenviable time slot of the last presentation in the litigation track of the conference. So everybody's going to be tired and sleepy. But I'll be with Kate Gettle from AIC.
I have to tell you, John, I turned that slot down. That's why I'm speaking.
I thought you were initially on that. Yeah.
I was initially on it. I said, wait a second, this is the last day and the last.
Oh, you have the Saturday 5 o'clock slot?
I had 5 and 6, yeah. So
I'll come.
So Kate, Jesse, and I will do the show.
Yeah, clearly, whoever planned the conference did not think much of litigation, is all I could tell you. I'd put it on Thursday morning at 10 o'clock. That's what I would put it. All right. Hey, I did want to mention this, just harkening back to our H-1B lottery stuff. I did do a FOIA for this year's information, specifically as to, for those listening that are involved in the FOIA H-1B stuff, to how many H-1B's applications were rejected by the USCIS under their threat that they said, look, if if this is done to help somebody, but it's not a real job offer, we won't accept it. And my initial FOIA to that was said, we don't have nothing. We don't have anything like that. And I appealed it, and they overturned it on appeal. I didn't even have to go to court. So now it's sitting at the National Benefits Center, where they have the data. So we'll keep everybody apprised of what's happening with
Chuck,
that.
have you heard anything, or John, about the regulation that supposedly was in the works on this issue?
Yeah, so I talked to a couple of people that are more in the know than I am, that are in government, and they speculated that we're looking at fall at the earliest at this point.
Okay, so it could be in place for next year.
Potential, possibly.
What is this thing? What is it that this regulation will be doing?
From what I gather, all of the things that they lost in court in the past 3 or 4 years, they're going to try to redo through regulation and try and reinstall.
Which I thought there was nothing in this regulation that was going to have to do with this issue that was in the litigation, which is
duplicate filing stuff.
The overfiling.
Yeah, the Grander H-1B, I don't know what they're going to be doing with the lottery piece of it, but the Grander H-1B reg is pretty much going to be trying to codify what they
we expected they would try to do that. I was just curious about the lottery stuff, because they made the changes in the registration page with no basis in statute. At least from their litigation position, they had no basis in statute to do that. So I was just kind of curious. I'm just kind of curious like everybody else, but I think we'll see something. There's some movement going on finally after 2 years.
It's a really squirrely issue when you start talking about, what type of notice and what type of recourse you have with changing forms and website applications, because technically those things have the force of a regulation.
Right.
And so, what your options are in terms of suing on a form change is kind of murky in the law, because it just doesn't happen that much. But it is an interesting, thing for the future. We probably should have sued on the old I-129, where it continued to ask for third-party placement information after they lost the case. Mm-hmm. But the clients were getting such fast approvals that it just wasn't really a concern. So,
well, I'm really looking forward to see, now that we're in the final 20 days of the 90-day filing window, how many actually are going to be filed of the 88,000 or whatever they notified of the winners, or 130,000 they notified of the winners.
Have any of our data guys actually made a prediction yet?
I don't think so. I'm waiting to hear from them. They may, after this, they may predict. My prediction is no more than 40,000, but we'll see.
All right.
We'll see. Should be.
I wouldn't be shocked if we see them repeatedly running the lottery like they did last year.
I agree.
Don't give up hope if you didn't get picked.
Hey, on the DV 2022, we're just everybody else, we're waiting on the judge.
Yeah.
Waiting on the judge on that case, and hopefully Judge Mehta will rule quickly on this. I know last year's summertime he was full of trials, and I think he's still full of trials this year. But the dude must take a vacation sometime.
Anything happening on your case, John?
So the discovery process is done. The government might try to depose one of their own witnesses who gave some testimony that was very damaging to their case. So to clarify that testimony, they may have to recall him and cross-examine their own witness, which is always a good time if you're a lawyer. That's how you know you.
Can I ask you to ask this question? Sure. Were you lying then?
Who told you to lie?
The proverbial beating your wife question, right? Stop. So we're moving forward. We've got a briefing schedule. We're plodding along. So the government tried to dismiss the case, which I think is a non-starter. If you're going to dismiss the case as a judge, that's a really easy opportunity for you to not do a lot of work.
Yeah.
But the court has been putting deadlines in place and forcing the government to go through the discovery process, which is a pretty strong indication that motion to dismiss is going nowhere.
We haven't gotten that far with Judge Maida, but the motion to dismiss was probably copied from your motion to dismiss.
Yeah, no, in fact, I think there was some copy and paste going on because there's information not relevant to our case that was included in it. So.
There's no doubt that that's going on. The appeals in the other cases they're waiting. We're waiting for an assignment to a panel and a oral argument date. Again, probably not before September, October. I just don't see it happening before then. And then on the EB5 litigation, just real briefly, everybody's been served. Government deadlines and answer are coming up in the next couple of weeks. And then the action starts. So I do know that some of our plaintiffs have had the relief granted to them. They've either been interviewed for their green cards, gotten their adjustment, or gotten consular processing, or gotten their 526 approved. Clearly, the immigrant investor office is working again. That's clearly happening. So we'll see where that ends up. But we're excited about that. All right, let's ask some questions here. Let's answer some questions here. We got some stuff. DG, obviously talking to John. Hello, lovely people.
The youngster.
And I just mentioned the Go case is just on appeal. Elena says, hello, Rohit. What is EBWastage's case going to be filed? I think Greg did a great job of answering that. Does it help if my product is current? I am one of the earliest filers, but still the green card not processing or filing 45J for EB3 and EB3 tub. That must be one of those secret acronyms they don't teach in immigration lawyer school.
Well, it's a downgrade. I'm sure it's what he said.
Yeah. So yeah, I think you're a great plaintiffs. It's this whole idea they took. They said go ahead and file downgrades. Just move the damn dates. You're just literally making more work for yourself rather than moving these dates forward. All right, Elena, please let us know the progress of the Bujabor lawsuit.
We just talked about that.
We've talked about that. HMV lottery abuse. Again, I'm not committing any lawsuit at all. We need to get information. And I told everybody we're going to wait and see when immigration announces how many have been filed.
USCIS seems to recognize the problem, and it's just a question of whether they are going to give it the bandwidth to solve it. So that's what we're waiting to see.
They know they're being watched. Okay. If final judgment on Go is to issue visas immediately, are these cases up to high priority other than other cases in embassies? Well, that's a good question. If the appeals court says, yeah, the judge reserved too few or just the right amount of visas, okay, what is Warsaw going to do? Well, now there's no deadline, right? So obviously we would ask for clarification, and we'd probably even an oral argument say if you're going to agree with us, set a deadline, 90 days, 60 days. So it'll be up to see what the court says on this. But you'll no longer subject to a deadline, so it might not go first. And one of the claims the government has made frequently in this case is, hey, we got too much work. You're making us do all these visas. Now you're dumping more work on us. Who hire some people. There you go. Just a secret answer.
I'm not sympathetic to that argument because we got the data and discovery on another case about how many people they've hired. And the hiring trajectory goes way high, but the work production has gone way low. And those two mismatching sets of data are inexplicable. So they've got the bandwidth. They just don't have the right management.
I felt for them. I know they lost a lot of people during the Trump years. I know there was a hiring freeze for a couple of years, the Trump years. But we're 2 years into Biden at this point. They've been hiring like a banshee. Where are these people? Yeah. And why haven't you called back all the people that quit and say, hey, you want your job back?
Why are they still not operating at full capacity at the consulates? Why are they still doing these 3-day, 2-day, 50% staffing, all this way in, and not letting people work these cases from home or do video interviews or all the other things that every other business figured out over the last couple of years of how to keep operating at full capacity? They have not made any major changes in the way they do business.
Pretty ticky-tacky there, Greg.
Yeah.
Ask them to do their jobs. I don't know. I don't know. Kalaji Kaushi, will we know in September? Again, no, I don't think we'll know in September. If oral argument is in September, maybe we'll know by the end of the year. Maybe. Celine, I'm inclined to V22 when I transfer location of my case from Ankara to Bosnia. Yeah, I know Turkey has been an issue. I don't know if you have Turks in your lawsuit, John. Turkey's been just not doing DV cases for some reason. And clearly you're Turkish, Celine. Your name is Senturk. So obviously you're a citizen of Turkey. I don't think Bosnia would take the case for somebody who's not stateless. Obviously you can ask, but I don't think, and I think my prediction is the consulate will get their case in gear and start interviewing people soon, but I can't promise that. Good afternoon, Mr. Cook, and your guest. John is not a guest. He's in his permanent office. Be clear.
He has a seat at the table.
He does. I did have a great vacation. I hope last week's show was great. I hope you guys enjoyed it last week. I would have dialed in, but I was out of
your back.
I was out of range. If Casey told me my case at the embassy, will I be interviewed until September? Well, I don't know. What, is your number low? What embassy? It's impossible for us to predict.
The answer is maybe.
Yeah. So guys, DV20 some of the Russian plaintiffs were accepted for DV in Rio.
Oh.
Really? I can think of worse places to have to go to than Rio. Great. And when you say some of us, hopefully that was you, were able to go through Warsaw. I know. I mean, I'm going to give kudos, though, to Warsaw.
Yeah.
Because they have done, I think, yeoman's work over the last 4 months.
Yeah.
For Ukrainians and for Russians coming in. I mean, kudos to them. And I think Frankfurt's playing a big role in that, too. I know that Frankfurt in our K1 litigation a couple of years ago was very, very helpful. And so, thank you guys at the consulates there. Not to you, Egypt. There's no thank yous to you in Cairo. Anish, how can we expect the policy to go? I already answered this question. CB man is back. We have no updates because obviously I would have led with that if we had any update on the K1 case with the judge. Frostman, hope they're not hot there. And here in Albania is getting any news on Go. We talked about that earlier. You can scroll back for the Go news. It's just pending on appeal. Trey is back. Can I open an LLC in order to start working with U.S. clients? It'll be 3 years. Well, Supreme Court, if government loses, they may try to go to SCOTUS. I don't see SCOTUS taking this.
Well, the other thing, is that the Supreme Court does two things. One is that they will, whether they hear the case or not, they also a lot of times will make a preliminary determination on what's going to happen in a case, even if they decide that they're going to take the case on there. So it's, even if this case goes to the Supreme Court, they still may tell the lower court and to tell the government that they have to continue operating and abide by the lower court decision until they actually have a decision. So it's not just going to the Supreme Court, it's what the Supreme Court does in the interim.
Yeah, even before they go to file their cert petition, the number of hoops they've got to jump through internally to get approval to do that are astronomical. And basically the case has to be bulletproof for the government to appeal something like that. And I would be really surprised if they did. I'm not going to guarantee it won't happen, but I would be shocked if they appealed that.
But to answer your question, Trey, yeah, you can open up an LLC and work remotely. That's perfectly fine to do that. You can also apply for other visas. You just make sure when you apply for a visa that everything in your DS-160 is true. But you can go to other visas. You get H-1B. Get an L, you get an E, whatever, depending where you're from. Tell the judge. Well, first of all, we don't tell the judge.
Let's just pick up the phone and call.
Tell the judge anything. And yes, of course, part of our argument is, includes all that very, very helpful.
How to lose your case.
Yeah, that'll be the key. Estelle Woodgate, good to see you. I have 2 questions. Do I have a list of judges by queue and whereas plaintiffs who are AV are in the queue? If you're a plaintiff, we don't have a queue list, all right? So we don't know what their queue is. All we know from the last update from the government is what code they had assigned you, whether you had been cleared, whether you had been ready for an interview, that's all we know. We don't have any more details at this point. Someone in our group took the I-134. Oh, this actually came up a little earlier today in a call I had, the I-134, which is not regulatorily required, not legally required for this process. And then told us to send 864? What?
For a DV?
For a DV case?
Yeah, that's not appropriate.
Yeah. That's literally made up out of whole cloth. And if they are one of our plaintiffs, they should contact either Aaron or I with those details, because that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. K1 processing already doubled. Well, here's my analogy for the service centers. I don't know if John agrees with this or not. The service centers are like that old tale of the little Dutch boy who is standing in front of the dike and there's a leak and he sticks his finger in it. And there's another leak and he sticks his other finger in it. And there's another leak, puts his toe in it. And there's another leak and he has to take a leak. That's how the immigration service operates. Wherever the leak is coming from, they rush people to that side. And an overwhelming number of K1s, they take people off probably I-130s and stick them over there. And they don't adjudicate I-130s for 6 months. So that's my take on how service centers operate.
So my take on the agency is a little bit more cynical.
More cynical?
Pretty cynical.
Yeah. So there's so many different things they could do to make life easier for themselves and for applicants, but they refuse to do it. They insist on doing everything the hard way. Basically, for your analogy, they could turn off a spigot and all the leaks would stop, but they would rather try and plug those with their fingers. And it's maddening to see when you're in it and you have a rational thinking brain and see how easy it would be to solve these problems, and yet they refuse to take the clearly rational choice. So yeah, the way they prioritize and the way they do things is maddening.
By the way, I don't know if you guys watched Chuck, you probably were on your cruise, but they had this stakeholder call or a listening session or whatever they call with Urge Do, and Doug Rand and a couple other heavyweights at the service, and it was talking about delays and backlogs. That was what the whole program was about, and they spent a lot of time talking about their personnel problems, that they, how many that they have. Still about 20% of their positions are open right now, and they kept plugging the USAjobs.gov website to go and encourage people to look for jobs. I went on that website, and one of the things that was a little bit shocking to me, I mean, there were a lot of problems that with the way these jobs are listed, but a very high percentage of these jobs that they are listed on there require government experience. And it's like, who's going to be switching from another government? And first, you either have to have somebody who worked in the government in the past, wants to get back into government. It's like, good luck with that. Or they have to be like at another agency and be interested in moving over to the agency that has the reputation as being like the worst run agency in government on there. I mean, why would they make that a requirement for most of the jobs that they could train people without government experience to do a lot of these jobs? And it was just very frustrating that, there's a reason why these jobs aren't being filled. Probably also their pay is too low. And also it was very confusing in a lot of respects, where they would list like 80 jobs under one thing, and it had like the city listed for the first of the positions, and you think that's where the job is, and it's like, well, I'm not interested in going to whatever city it was on there, and you don't realize that. But I mean, it was just so sloppy the way that they're actually trying to fill these jobs. I'm not very optimistic that they're going to get anywhere close anytime soon to filling the openings.
Well, I just went on the website just now to look at the job openings, and there's some fascinating stuff on here. Like, they have an immigration analyst at the fraud detection unit, which is also illegal, by the way. And the salary is $38,000 a year.
Woohoo!
For Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
That might pay for your metro fees each year.
I think you're living in your car if you're taking that job in Washington, D.C. I got to tell you, folks, there is that. Quick
to
question.
your point, Greg, having been a former government employee when I was at DOJ, it took over a year to transition to USCIS. So assuming they get those people, to get them in place and trained is another 18 months to 2 years.
Quick question, diversity 2020. If you lose your code to check, I don't know the answer to this question. I'm really sorry, Super C. Sorry.
By the way, sort of related to all this, I'm going to be moderating a panel in Miami for the International Bar Association about artificial intelligence and its integration into immigration systems around the world, as far as like governments using AI to adjudicate cases. And most people around the world are like horrified, thinking that, you know, like the algorithms are going to basically, you know, profile and do all this other stuff. And it's like, as a US practitioner, it's like, which is worse? on there. Is there anything that the machines could do worse than what we're seeing right now on there? So
at least you would know the criteria instead of residing in the head of some officer making stuff up. We did. I'm going to give you a great example of this. We had a client came to see us after their interview with their spouse. They hadn't used a lawyer, and they were just so offended at the interview. They wanted to know. They came. How do we file a complaint against the officer? Well, why do you want to file a complaint against the officer? Well, he asked us how many times we had sex each week. Which, as anybody's immigration lawyer knows, that is like verboten. You do not ask that in an interview. And she was adamant that he had asked it. And then they set her up for another follow-up interview a week later. So we're going today. I'll report back next week how this goes.
Oh my God.
First thing that we walk in and say, supervisor, please. Vignesh, H-1B abuse to make potential. Vignesh, we mentioned earlier on, we have a FOIA pending. We'll be taking a look at that. But we really want to wait to make any decisions on where we might go until we see what the numbers for applications look like. Casey promised all the cases scheduled 20 remaining. That's true. I mean, but this has always been true. I mean, the fact that some embassies process more DVs than others has always been true.
I think it's exacerbated this year with the way they changed the rules and gave all kinds of discretion to each individual consulate to prioritize however they want to do it in different visa categories. I think that's made it an even more unpredictable field to be in.
Yeah, and you know the thing about this whole individual, you know, decide what you want to do, is there are a number of consular officials who don't like the lottery, who think it's evil, who think it's bad, that reflect President Trump's view of the lottery. Stephen Miller's, and if they think that, they just won't interview them. So there you go. Oh, TUB is transfer of underlying basis.
Right. Downgrade.
Yeah, of course. We just call it downgrade. TUB. I must have missed that memo in law school. Let's see. The data from the Morrison. Curtis is doing great work on his litigation. More kudos to him and those guys for doing that. Joe Puccini, we're not drinking cola anymore. I had a Diet Coke. I'm trying to not. I'm turning 60 this year. I want to be in the best shape of my life. Diet Coke. Almaty Embassy is doing a very bad job. You can cross that Almaty and put like 100 other embassies there. Under 10, me and my. Well, again, you know, I think statistically speaking, we go back and look at the numbers. If you pick any year you want, almost half. Maybe Simon will tell me I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. That almost half of DV numbers are probably adjudicated in the last quarter of the year.
They almost always toward the end, in most years, also make it current for all numbers.
Everybody. So I think that's where you're kind of that. Okay. My question: does the EBWastage litigation, my PD is current, or is still green on process? And yes, I mean, because if they're not going to get to your case, you're going to lose numbers till next year, and they might retrogress. Who knows? Because keep in mind, they're supposed to. These numbers for priority dates are based upon available visas. Well, if all of a sudden 120,000 visas go in the toilet bowl, and we don't see the rollover for family that we saw in the previous couple of years, you can be backlogged for years again. So yes, I think you do benefit from litigation. Let's see. Rohit, you don't have to ask the question once, dude. All right. So that's all our questions for today. It's great to see everybody. John, great to see you. Really great to see you. Look forward to seeing
Good
you
to
next
see you
week.
guys too.
We'll be at the Marriott Marquis. The conference, of course, is a mile and a half away up the subway line on
Right chair.
But this is the first AILA conference in New York in like
My lifetime.
Yeah, 40 years, I think, because it was always considered too expensive. But honestly, they got great rates for this conference. So, in comparison. And next year it's Orlando. So enjoy the beauty of New York in June. Having grown up in New York through my up to my college years, June is like the perfect month in New York. It's just beautiful. So enjoy it. You guys take care. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.